Is someone that you love affected by ADHD, and are you trying to figure out which chemicals and toxins that you should avoid? If so, you're in the right place, because that is exactly what I'm going to talk about in this video. Hi, my name is Lysande Garcia, and I'm an integrative, developmental, and educational specialist, and my focus is helping you reverse the learning and behavior challenges your child is experiencing. In this video, we are going to look a little deeper into the problems with different toxins and chemicals. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you'll be the first to know when I post a new piece of content. So in the previous video, we talked about 4 underlying contributors of ADHD. So if you didn't catch that, you can go back and watch that. In that video, though, we were talking about toxins and the roles that they play in the gut. Some toxins might directly contribute to the microbiome being imbalanced or the lining of the gut being full of holes, otherwise known as a leaky gut, but others might just be getting into the system and activating the immune system or causing all sorts of chaos. Chemicals and toxins can affect the endocrine system, throwing out your hormones, causing all sorts of chaos. Some act as xenoestrogens. These are estrogen mimicking hormones. It's like kind of like synthetic estrogens. So, that's not good for anyone, whether you're a girl or a boy, to have synthetic forms of estrogen. And one thing that contributes to, for example, is like adding visceral fats. Another thing that, all these different chemicals, they can start a whole histamine, because they're activating the immune system. They are causing like a whole chain reaction with histamine and mast cell activation. Histamine is part of mast cell activation, and mast cell activation is a part of cancer even. So it's just having chemicals in our bodies is really not good for anything. Toxins, such as heavy metals, are stored in fat oftentimes, okay? And your brain is pretty much a big lump of fat. So a lot of these chemicals and metals are stored in the brain. Metals in the brainstem can contribute to hypersensitivities, for example. And remember that we said wherever the inflammation is, that's the symptoms that we're going to be experiencing. So anything from brain fog to poor memory, problems concentrating, learning, bipolar, anxiety, dementia, whatever. Anything that the brain can do can be affected if the metals and chemicals are in the brain or somehow causing inflammation in the brain. As far as heavy metals, the most common metals, I guess, that we are always pretty much need to be aware of, or most problematic, are mercury, which are in certain fish, are shots, fillings. So if you have the metal fillings, that has mercury in it, by the way. Lead, which would be found more like in paint, some dishes, especially from out of country. And even bone broth, which could be surprising, because our bones, we have calcium, right? We want calcium in our bones, but calcium also competes with lead. So if you don't have enough calcium, you can have lead in the bones. So it really makes a lot of sense to think that, well, if you're making bone broth from, animals that maybe weren't nourished correctly, or they were eating their feed, because they always say you're eating what your food ate. So if you're eating, animal like a cow or chicken or whatever, and their feed was tainted, then that's going to get in the animal and that's going to get into you. So and arsenic is another one, and that is often found in rice, especially the rice from China. And cadmium is, I guess, mostly known for smoke, being around cigarette smoke. But it's my Joshua, he had high cadmium issues, but there were no smokers in his life. But that's one of the sources. Actually, cadmium. I think if you live near a lot of traffic, we lived close to a freeway, and so that can also have cadmium. Aluminum, also in the shots. The reason that metals are in the shots are because they act as an adjuvant, which is an immune stimulating substance, and also as a preservative. So there you go. And also aluminum is often found in our sky. So if you look up and you see a bunch of lines going this way and that way, yeah, some of that is, or a lot of that is nanonized aluminum. And you know, things can't stay in the sky forever. It would be great if the technology was whatever they were spraying eventually went out to space, but whatever is in our atmosphere ends up coming down, unfortunately. And that's nanonized. Anything that's nanonized can really easily get in your lungs and other things. And then there's nickel, uranium, thallium. Those are just different metals. Heavy metals can be also, you know, found in obvious places, right? So like the lead in old paint, right? So if you have a really old house, they always warn you that like pre-1978, if it was painted, there's, you know, it could be lead paint. But other chemicals are going to be found in things like cleaning, hygiene products. We'll talk about that in a minute. Things that are, you know, out in the air again. Actually, you know, autism rates are pretty high, or higher. I mean, they're pretty high everywhere now. We'll talk about that on another day. But near farms, so you would think that when you're near a farm and it's like, you know, more whole, you know, down to earth because you're growing stuff. But those big farms like in the Midwest, because they're being sprayed with pesticides and glyphosate, well, anybody who lives downwind from that is getting a lot of exposure. So people who live near big farms are actually more at risk than people who might live like in the suburbs or maybe even in the city. So I don't have data of comparing cities to suburbs, but I do know that people who live farms are downwind from glyphosate, and that causes big problems from a lot of issues. So other issues are with like foods, or with the foods, because we already have the glyphosates that we've talked about, are the artificial ingredients such as colors and preservatives. So an example, aspartame is an artificial sweetener, and that causes cancer, seizures, strokes, dementia, brain tumors, gut dysbiosis, mood disorders, headaches, and migraines. I guess if I had to tell you to avoid one thing, if you had to just today take one thing out of your life, make sure that aspartame, which is otherwise known as NutraSweet, and I haven't really heard it much anymore, but I know it's around. So you have to look because it's in some, like, I don't know which brands, but you know those sodas that have like no calories or whatever. So it's in some of those. You have to be very careful. Sodium nitrate is another one. Those are in processed meats and bacons. Make sure you always get the nitrate free. It can be kind of hard to find, but if you look, most stores have like one version. I think Applegate might be a brand. But sodium nitrates cause stomach and colon cancers and the blood's ability to deliver oxygen to the body. But I do know that I need to stay away from nitrates. It causes a lot of issues. There is diacetol, which is used mostly with popcorn. So I'm imagining, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm imagining it's probably in those like microwave popcorn ones. But that one crosses the blood-brain barrier and is really bad for memory. It has an effect on the buildup of beta amyloids, which is in the brain, which is often talked about with Alzheimer's. And MSG, that's one thing I know I have to stay away from. And that's because it gives me a migraine, because MSG is monosodium glutamate. It's a form of glutamate. Your body already makes glutamate is a neurotransmitter. And so we have this nice checks and balances. We make glutamate, it's an excitatory neurotransmitter, and we're supposed to be able to, through enzymes and processes, convert it essentially into GABA. And GABA is calming. And a lot of Kids on the spectrum for sure have a really hard time converting glutamate to GABA, so a lot of them need to take extra GABA. So you do not want to be throwing fuel on the fire with MSG. And the problem is MSG has so many different names, but it affects glutamatergic neurotransmission. It bypasses the blood-brain barrier, and high levels can remain for 24 hours. So anytime you get anything that you're sensitive to, your body can be responding, and it might not even have an immediate response. 24 hours, 48 hours later. I know if I have MSG, like I said, I can get migraines, or maybe I can get like a histamine response where I can see the lines if I'm scratching my skin. But MSG has hidden names, and so it's really hard, maybe about 15 to 20. So you have to do a search. What are all the hidden names for MSG? And look for those on your labels, and you'll be surprised what some of those hidden names are. But MSG is like responsible for things like, and it's not the only cause, but it contributes to things like schizophrenia, depression, autism, hormone imbalances, weight gain, brain damage, headaches, hives, canker sores, runny nose, insomnia, seizures, mood swings, aggressiveness, OCD, depression, insomnia, psychosis, panic attacks, heart palpitations, other heart irregularities, nausea, numbness, asthma attacks, migraines, and restless leg syndrome. Okay, and that's probably even just to name a few. So there's like nothing like with MSG that's probably helpful. I was actually surprised. MSG was created, well, not created, was, I don't know, like reformulated or whatever from Japanese, and I think like an original source might be like from kelp, something in the ocean, not really 100% sure on that, but I was really surprised when we did live in Japan that at Costco you could find bags that just said MSG, and I'm like, what? Because they use it in cooking. Now I don't know if that MSG is made from a source that is less harmful than whatever. I doubt it, but I just can assure you we never bought a bag of that MSG. So again, it has hidden names. You need to do your due diligence. Another thing is high fructose corn syrup. So taking out MSG and high fructose corn syrup, like exclusive, like completely, like 100%, no questions asked from my diet, I know totally contributed to the reduction of whatever the histamine response. So I used to get, I don't know if any of you out there get like where if you would, I think they call it dermographism or whatever, if you write on your arm and then you can literally see what you wrote. I had that like forever. I didn't always have it, but once I was like in my early 20s, that's when I kind of started. And then, but until I completely cut out high fructose corn syrup, because that is not as natural as it sounds. Okay, so it's pretty bad for you. So another thing is the dyes. Okay, so we hear, the dyes, especially related to ADHD, red dye number 40 being a particular one. That was, I think, the original diet associated with ADHD was the Feingold diet. That might have even been in the late 70s when that started, probably because people started noticing that red dye is causing a problem. And I still get clients that will say, no, I know that red dye number 40 totally causes a problem with my child. And then I've also heard specifically aspartame too. But we have red dye number 2 or 40, and they are associated with irritability, depression, mind storms associated with temper or suicidal thoughts, panic attacks, distractibility, and confusion. Then we have blue number 1. Blue number 1 is actually absorbed more than any other color, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And it's also often mixed with yellow number 6 to make green. So anytime you say blue or green, there's some blue in there. Those will cause headaches, migraines, anxiety, crying, and fatigue, among other things, even chromosomal damage. And in chromosomal damage, I would assume could be caused by any of the chemicals or toxins, or I should say, any number of them that even if they don't say they're causing chromosomal damage, they very well could be. So just because somebody didn't find it out, you know, when you're damaging your chromosomes and your DNA, you know, you really want to stay away from that. So yellow, contributing to hyperactivity, mood swings, headaches, and then preservatives in foods, you know, because things need a big shelf life. So things like sodium benzoate, nitrosamines, or nitrates, BHA, BHT. Again, stay away from nitrates and as many preservatives as you absolutely can, because those chemicals are not good for you. So if you really want to know more about how foods affect moods and behavior and learning, then you can click on the link in the description for my ebook on how foods affect mood, learning, and behavior. And anyway, so then we have things like PFCS, phthalates, BPA. Lots of these are xenoestrogens. So all those like plastics and certain chemicals, they act as the xenoestrogens that we were talking about, those estrogen mimicking compounds. And they interfere with things like puberty and fertility, increasing body fat, causing problems with the immune system and nervous system. So you don't want to have any of that. You have the most control with the chemicals. You know, in our environment, we have, like I say, we have things that are being sprayed in our air. We have things that are in our water. So you can be filtering out your water with a good filter, a Berkey filter, or just try to find a really good filter that, you know, go to your city website, look for the water report. Every city is different. Fortunately, my city doesn't have fluoride. We didn't even talk about fluoride. But fluoride is really, it's a huge neurotoxin, right up along with mercury. Okay, so mercury, fluoride, and aluminum are like the three no-nos. And so fortunately, we don't have fluoride in our water. But go to your city website, pull up your water report, and see what's in, you know, what they've tested. You know, when's the last time they test what's in your water. And then try to find a filter for that. Because, for example, for me, I don't need a specific filter for fluoride. And by the way, fluoride is almost impossible to filter out because it's like a gas. And you can just go and, you know, look up what's in your water and what can you do to filter it, and then make sure you're changing your filters. And another thing is the most that you have controls like within your own house. So again, we don't really have control with what we're breathing outside. I mean, you could move to a different environment, but pretty much we're seeing stuff in our air everywhere. So it's really hard to avoid certain things. But inside your house, you have, you're cleaning your house, and you're putting hygiene products on your body. Those are the two biggest things that you have complete control over. So for cleaning your house, do not use anything that's a chemical. You know, once in a while, my husband, like, he does maintenance, and we have rentals, and so sometimes we need to clean something very specific. It's like a one-time deal, and so we have certain chemicals just for that one little thing. But for cleaning our house, we use water, baking soda, and vinegar. That's pretty much all we use. Now, I will say that I haven't found, there are some good products now for dish soap, I haven't discovered for myself the best laundry swap. I did make some coconut laundry soap once, but it's, you know, it's a pain in a process, so I didn't stick with it. But so that not 100% in my house have I been able to swap, so I'm still looking for those two. A great dish soap that doesn't leave a residue, because every time I tried something, it was just like kind of like a residue, and then a good laundry soap. Other than that, even my husband washes our carpet. We don't put that carpet shampoo. We just put vinegar. Your house smells like a bag of potato chips for, you know, a few hours, and after that, then it's clean. We have a vinegar in water in a spray bottle whenever we need to spray something. We also use hypochlorous acid. if we need to make sure something's more disinfected. So swap out your cleaning supplies and then your hygiene products. I make my own goat milk soap. It's actually way easy. It's easier than the coconut oil laundry soap. But I make my own goat milk soap. It is really easy. The hardest thing to do is just to get out all your ingredients, and you kind of have to know what you're going to use, and you have to go online to a lye calculator and just plug in how much of whatever oils and fats that you want to use. I try to save, if we're making like bone broth, and I try to save the beef tallow, and I've used that also in my soaps, and I use cocoa, and I put everything in there that's organic. So you have complete control with what goes on your body, even your shampoos and whatnot. Now, you may know, if you know me, that Joshua, my 22-year-old, is moderate to severely autistic, and so we've been on this journey for a really long time. When one time we tested him, and he did test like for phthalates, which is just different chemicals and plastics or whatever. So we used to live in front. So when we were in San Diego, we probably had really bad contaminated soil, and kids, they stick stuff in their mouth. And B, behind us from the alley, right behind us, there's a guy, and he did spray painting for a living. So that wasn't real fun. And then we lived in a Victorian house, and then we lived right in front of a freeway. The freeway was down. There was green growth on the side. You couldn't hear it, but and I'm sure it trapped a lot of the junk, but it doesn't mean it trapped everything. But when you're kind of in the urban area, there's those kind of chemicals. So Joshua, though, he is maxing out of his adult school program this year. He's 22. So next month he will not be in school anymore, and we're not really sure if he can get a job or what he can do. Probably not. So that means it's going to be like before preschool all over again in a way, but he's more independent now. However, I'm now going to take this time and dedicate to visiting detox. So we did a lot of detox when he was younger, and then we kind of did some along the way, but now I want to go back and just do some more detox, because detoxing is going to be the very critical piece of your journey. You have all these fats or all these heavy metals and chemicals in your body, and you have to detox. You have to do it smart. You can't do it willy-nilly. Another thing to know is that on toxins is that parasites actually live off of your toxins. So if any of you who have ever thinking about doing a parasite cleanse, you want to make sure that you're considering the fact that when you kill these parasites, it unleashes all these toxins, and they can be in your system. So you got to figure out what kind of binders that you need on board to be able to grab onto those toxins. So don't just kill bugs and parasites without considering the fact that you're going to need to be able to grab these toxins. And when you are detoxing, you have to first make sure your bowels are moving and your lymph is, moving, but especially your bowels, that you're going to the bathroom, your kids are going to the bathroom, because you do not want to recirculate your toxins either. Okay, so in the next video, we are going to talk about ways to prevent ADHD.